have you seen technology influence young children's lives?
I can definitely tell that they live this double life of trying to find their identity in social media, but that's not who they actually are in reality. And it even goes down to the students that I teach. They're only in 5th grade, and they feel the necessity to create this identity outside of who they actually are as a 10-year-old. And so they post pictures of themselves or find security in how many likes they get or how many friends they have on a particular social media site. And you're 10. I mean, do you even know more than 20 people in your life? But yet you have, so many followers, and they find such security in that identity. But then in reality, they aren't anything like the character that they're portraying. And so they themselves don't even understand who they are, because social media has given them this opportunity to try to create for themselves this false, unrealistic expectation, because it's what they see being put out so often. And so they almost have this idea that they have to be like a 25-year-old at the age of 10, because that's what they continually get exposed to. And it gives them a lot of access to material that is way too mature for their mindset. And so they continually expose themselves to things that as a 10-year-old, you shouldn't be worrying about how you look. You shouldn't be worrying about how others think about how you look. You're 10 years old. And you should worry about whether or not your bike goes faster than the neighbors. And yet they have these unrealistic expectations that they continually have to impress people with the lifestyle that they live as a child. And so you're getting a really low personal morale coming from some of these kids, because they aren't the thing that they're portraying, and yet that's what's being accepted, not who they actually are.
So social media, it destroys the way that you look at yourself, and it can easily take away your self-worth. What we often begin to do is look at our lives and we think, my popularity or who I am is determined by how many retweets or how many likes I get on Twitter or on Instagram. We want to have that post that everyone thinks, man, you nailed it. Because none of us ever post something with the thought of, man, I hope no one likes this. What begins to happen is we find our identity in what social media says about us. But the problem is eventually we can't separate ourselves from that device or from the social media. Social media begins to mask reality, because no longer do we see things that are real in the way they're meant to be seen. Another example would be, with celebrities. If you get the blue check mark next to your Twitter name, then you, of course, have more followers, you're popular, and so everyone is going to want to hear your opinion. And typically when someone with the blue check mark posts something, you just assume that's the majority rule, and that's the opinion the rest of the world has, but typically it's not. And so what they say masks reality, and it changes the way you think, and it changes the way you see things. So social media has this weird effect where it completely destroys the community that we have with people. Think about it. Facebook, we can be friends with people across the globe and talk with them like we're best friends, but have no interaction with them really whatsoever. Or Twitter's a place where we voice our problems. We'll get on Facebook and put this huge story about how awful my day was, and we do it because we want someone to hear us, but we don't know how to interact with someone face to face. We really don't know people. I can sit down at my house or lay in my bed next to my wife, and we can be scrolling through Twitter, each on our own phones, not talking, and I can think to myself, because of this, do I know more about this pastor I follow in North Carolina, more about him than I know about my wife who's sitting next to me? Or parents, do you know more about the latest news that's hit the Twitter world or hit any sort of social media app, more than you know your kid's favorite food or favorite color? Our identity and our lives have gotten so consumed in social media that no longer can I sit face to face and talk to someone else. Imagine what you do every single day. If you're like me, the first thing you do when you wake up is you grab your phone and you check social media. I'll check my email I'll check my Twitter, see if I have any notifications, and I'll put it away. Then once I get to the office, I get back onto social media to see if I missed anything, because I don't want to be not in the loop. I want to understand what's going on in the world. But what begins to happen is I find pleasure and I find identity in that device. We live in a world that needs to be entertained, and we have the world at our fingertips through social media, and so we always come to that for entertainment. You'll be sitting in class and the teacher won't let you have your phone, and she's really boring, and so all you can think about is getting on this device and being satisfied with entertainment. Or you think of maybe a lustful issue in your life, and it's that device that feeds that lust, and you can't imagine going a day without it. Or against your popularity, that who I am is defined by the tweets I get mentioned in, or it's comfort. We all have moments in life where we just want to separate from the world. Maybe it's because we're at home and our brother or sister is annoying us, or our mom and dad are fighting, and we just want to run away from it. And so we go into our room, we lock the door, and we get onto our phone, and we'll mindlessly scroll through our Twitter feed, resulting in saying, this is where my comfort's really found. And we begin to live in such a way where if I don't have this device, then I can't live. I'm lost without it.
How have you seen media and media addiction affect relationships, specifically in a marriage or family setting?
Okay. I had a situation at a church that I served at where an older gentleman, believe it or not, probably in his late 60s, early 70s, right as Facebook was coming into its own, his wife got on Facebook and actually friended an old boyfriend from high school. And this couple had been married for probably 40 years. And she up and left him to go have a relationship with her boyfriend from high school. So she threw away 40 years of marriage to rekindle some old flame that she had in high school, which was pretty heart-wrenching, and it really impacted the guy's life, as you might imagine. Good couple, good godly couple, and she just got led astray by that temptation, and it cost her her marriage and really impacted her family. I've got a young man that I'm working with now whose dad developed an addiction to pornography and led to the divorce in the marriage, led to children that don't really want to have anything to do with their dad, which is really heart-wrenching, and led to a mom that honestly is fearful for the safety of her family because of the extreme addiction that he has.
What can you see as some of the long-term effects of media addiction?
Well, that's an interesting question. I was born in 71, and I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I grew up when video games were just being introduced, Atari and things like that. And, prior to that, my generation was very much outdoors. We're out there, we're playing. We'd get up in the morning, and especially in the summertime, and we'd go out and we'd ride our bikes, and we'd play football or baseball or whatever, and we'd play all day, and the only time we would come home would be for lunch or for dinner. And then, so we were very active and very involved, and we could communicate face-to-face with people. And even in my generation, as video games began to advance, I saw more of a disconnect where guys were spending more time in front of the television and playing these role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons and things like this that would really suck the guys in. So I saw a disconnect there, and I'm not a video gamer now, and I'm not a social media guy now, but I see a little bit of a increased, well, not a little bit, but a lot more of a disconnect as far as personal, ability to have personal communication, one-on-one, talk with somebody, look somebody in the face, have a conversation like we're having. People are more apt to text, or people are more apt to communicate via Facebook. And I don't know that that's always negative, but I think it has the potential to really impact the way we deal one-on-one with people. And then, like I said earlier, that whole being sucked into this make-believe world of gaming because it's an outlet or whatever it is, to the detriment of relationships. You know, I can see that being an addiction just like any other addiction, where that's your sole focus.